Hello, Adam. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Stephen. Good.
Good. Hello and welcome to everyone watching. Welcome to the December edition of Ask Adam. It's been a little while since our last session, but we're delighted to bring you another opportunity to put your questions to our interim chief executive, Adam, prior to the end of the year. These question and answer sessions continue to be incredibly popular, and we're committed to keeping the momentum going with better planning to timetable monthly Ask Adams for 2025, which is in progress. We hope this will make it easier for you to stay updated and keep allow you to get the answers that you need. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions this time around and for your patience awaiting a response. So Adam, let's dive straight in. So starting with one of the most challenging issues we face at the moment, Adam, we've got a question on ambulance stacking, hospital flow and delayed discharges. I know this is a huge concern for everyone across the system in Grampian, so I'm grateful to the anonymous emergency department nursing colleague who sent this in. She writes, what's the plan to get us out of the constant cycle of ambulance stacking, delayed discharges and being on the brink of critical or major incidents? Without extra capacity across the hospital and community and more staff, it feels like we're stuck. Is there any hope of more resources from the government, or is this just the new normal?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen, and thanks for the question. I think this is probably one of our most pressing issues at the moment. So maybe I could answer that in a couple of steps. So I think first off is some immediate planning we've got in place at the moment. So we're in discussion with Scottish Ambulance Service and Scottish Government to look at what might be possible for us to try and alleviate the ambulance stacking very quickly. So that's a temporary solution that relates to some additional post-differentiation capacity. Definitely not the whole answer and not the long-term answer at all, but might allow the flow into the hospital just to be smoothed out from both EMER and ED. So we're in discussion with Scottish Government about that around potential funding support us to do that. And that's the first part of a three-phase plan, with the second phase looking at much more to do with the flow through different specialties in the hospital, alongside the flow out of the hospital into the community setting. So again, working with health and social care, and the question asked about delayed discharge thing, and I'll come back to that in a sec. And then the third phase of the plan is much more stepping into that much bigger bed-based review, which I think we've spoken about before, but that's the bit of work that's trying to get the hospital right-sized against the size of the population and the activity that we expect to do. So there are good plans in development. As you know, we're sitting with a very significant overspend, nearly £80 million overspent as an organisation. Our freedom to commit resource to different bits is is beyond our control at the moment. So again, we're working with government, as I say, to try and see if we could step forward into that reduction of ambulance stacking. So that's really the plan. I mentioned a little bit about delayed discharge. That's a real challenge at the moment, and I guess the reality is to recognise the incredible challenge and pressure that colleagues in health and social care are facing, both in terms of demand, the activity that they're able to provide, and like us in NHS Grampian, they health and social care partnerships also have a real financial challenge as well. So you know, across our whole system, we're definitely challenged at the moment. The plans I've just described will take us forward. Some of them are short term, some are medium and long term. And I think if I could, Stephen, the last thing I'd say is in the question, I think they used an expression something like the new normal, did you say? And that's a perpetual worry to me and my team, is that we get used to how busy the hospital or the community is, and we do start to accept that as a new normal. And I'm absolutely determined that we don't do that. You know, we need to remove non-standard bed spacing, all these things that relate to our capacity. So I'm absolutely sure it must feel like, you know, a new normal for everyone working in our system. But key to our planning, to our work and to our actions will be to absolutely not have this as a new normal over a slightly longer period of time.
Okay, thank you, Adam. I hope that the colleague who asked the question and others watching, get a sense of the direction on this, and yeah, as you say, that it's not becoming either the new normal or just being accepted. So certainly feeds into discussions that I know you and I have had in other places, including Grampian Area Partnership Forum, about the same topic. So thank you.
Stephen, sorry to interrupt you, Stephen. I just wonder, I didn't mention anything about the critical incident then, and I wonder if that would just be a moment to really extend my thanks to everyone that was involved in the critical incident a few weeks ago, which was triggered by a level of activity beyond what we're just describing and in the extremely busy system we operate in. And that allowed us to do a small number of things that helped to reduce the immediate demand. We then returned to business as usual as we understand at the moment. I got pulled up by that from someone the other day that this shouldn't be business as usual. So again, just to make that clear, in our current level, that's definitely higher with non-standard bed space than absolutely any of us want. So, but that was just to mention that critical incident, and my genuine thanks to everyone that was involved right across the system, clearly in our organisation, but also colleagues in Scottish Ambulance Service, the Health and Social Care Partnership. Everyone absolutely pulled out all the stops and made a real difference. So my thanks to everyone for that.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Okay, Adam. Next question is from an anonymous consultant in Aberdeen Royal Infirmary who asks, why are fire alarms tested so frequently on weekday mornings? They're really disruptive. Could this be done any earlier, for example, at 7:30 in the morning, or with fewer repetitions?
Yeah, God, what an interesting question. I have my team meeting on a Tuesday morning in Summerfield House when the fire alarms are tested every Tuesday at the time. So I'm really familiar with the disruption, and clearly, if I'm sure this question is referring to clinical areas, so far more disruption for far more people involved. So I think that I can only really say two key things about it. The first is, no one would dispute the need for us to test fire alarms, and it's absolutely critical. And fire safety is paramount to running big buildings with lots and lots of people in them. So we can't not do them. And I know the question is not suggesting that for a second. They're suggesting about a change in time. And let me pick that up. I'll ask Alan Wilson, our Director of Infrastructure, if there's something we can do. My kind of reflection would be, I suspect there's no perfect time, is there? That if we go earlier, it will, I don't know, do something else that it doesn't do later. But let me have a little look at that with Alan Wilson and just see if there's something we can do differently. But thanks for the question, and we'll see if there's something that is possible, and we'll feed that back through the daily brief. And if we've got the questioner's name, we'll feed back directly to them as well. But we'll ask Mike, who supports us in this work, just to pick that up and make sure we get something in the daily brief once we've had a discussion with Alan.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Wayne Cameron, who's in the security team, and he's got a question about external door security. During the pandemic, Aberdeen Royal Infirmary hospital doors were locked nightly at 10 p.m. Now they're open 24/7. Isn't this a security risk? When will this issue be fixed?
Well, thanks to Wayne for bringing this up. It was something I wasn't aware of at all, and clearly an important issue for us to be aware of and to take forward. My understanding is that quite a number of our doors are electronically locked at 10 p.m. So there's a sort of a central mechanism, and then staff can enter with badge access through those doors. At between 10 and 7 in the morning, at 10 and 6 in the morning. Of course, ED's open 24/7 quite appropriately, and my understanding is that some doors are being manually locked around the West Gate, the Rotunda, and the security staff do that as part of their patrols. So I think there's still some issues with some other doors that aren't working properly is the feedback I've had from estates about this issue, having been able to ask them just before, and estates have confirmed that they're aware of this and the problems we've got at the east end of the hospital, and that it's on their task list, and they're going to get that sorted as soon as they can.
Okay.
And maybe Stephen, maybe a good commitment for me to make here is that I will follow that up. So I'll put that on my list and chase up through Alan that we're actually getting that resolved. Because again, security in our buildings is very, very important for everyone's well-being, obviously.
Yep. Thank you, Adam. Got a question here from an anonymous colleague in public health. The Trickle App launched with a lot of excitement, but seems to have disappeared without notice. What has happened to it?
Yeah, so the Trickle App was launched a few years ago, wasn't it? And we had some variable use of it and some variable value from it, just to be really clear. It works really well for some things and not so well for others. I think at the moment we're concentrating on using it with some with our junior doctor cohort to support things like Best with Rest, Stephen, the program that you're leading with other colleagues. So I think we're again trying to build it up in a sensible sort of scale and speed. So as I say, working with junior doctors, seeing how it helps them with their breaks, their rest, all these things, and then as that unfolds, we can obviously look to expand it to re-expand it, reuse it in the organisation in broader cohorts. My recollection from using it first time is it does need some ownership and some capacity to pick up and help moderate and help solve issues that can't be solved within the group, which is the key idea of it, is that people are self-solving issues. So I think that's one of the things, again, as we build it up, we need to be really thoughtful about how we make it a sustainable app for us to use.
Okay, thank you. And this next question is from a nursing colleague who works in Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, and it's about uniforms. So a topic that I know, Adam, you and I have been talking about, will continue to do so. So this colleague says they have seen many staff and students coming to work in their uniforms and then going home in them again at the end of their shift. They're using public transport as well as their cars. There should be some deterrent for doing this. It is an infection issue. Yeah. It seems that people have short memory of the pandemic we have just come through. Is there anything that can be done? It seems the norm for staff and students to shop in their uniforms also.
Yeah, thanks. It is a real perennial challenge, isn't it? So just to be really clear, the policy sets out that people can only wear their uniforms in and at work or whilst conducting work business, and obviously for community staff that's probably slightly different than someone that's based in a hospital all of the time or a clinic or wherever. So we've got to work together to ensure that people follow the policy, that they get changed at work, not at home, and travel in their work gear, and things like shopping in your uniform, just clearly not acceptable at all, both in terms of the infection prevention control issues, but also that message we're giving to the public about that infection prevention control and the hygiene and everything associated with uniforms in healthcare. I mean, the other bit I'm really conscious of, Stephen, and again, this is something we've spoken about and we've spoken about in GAPF, is actually it's very difficult for some staff in some areas because we don't have good changing facilities. So I think this is another opportunity for me to explain about the bit of work we're doing through GAPF to relook at how do we actually ensure we've got proper changing facilities for everyone. So I'm thinking for people that are listening to this and saying, yeah, but where do I get changed? That again is something on Stephen's and my agenda to absolutely get sorted for people, so there is proper changing facilities. Meantime, really important we follow the policy and people don't travel in uniforms other than for work reasons, which is legitimate, obviously.
Yep. thanks, Adam. And yeah, as you said, there's an ongoing piece of work for us to lead as the co-chairs of Grampian Area Partnership Forum. But yes, and I think you also use the sort of phrase, it's a perennial problem.
It is a real challenge.
So yes, hopefully for colleagues who work in hospital sites, they will, in the coming months, they may see some progress on that. But I realise, of course, saying that now on video, we may well get follow-up questions as a result. So
good.
We shall see in time. Okay, another change of topic. Now, we've had a couple of anonymous colleagues who are asking if there's an update on the electric car salary sacrifice scheme. One of them notes that people were told to expect news several months ago, and that they're held off buying a new vehicle because of that.
Yeah. So apologies, this has taken ages. This is something I kicked off what feels like a while ago. However, good news, end is in sight. We're in the procurement process. There's a group working so that we have, as an organisation, a mechanism to procure an organisation that will then procure individual cars for colleagues and within our organisation who are able to use the scheme or want to use the scheme. So the target is that should finish in February next year, so just a couple of months away now. And then after that, obviously, we'll work with the provider to get the scheme up and running, and I'm sure there'll be another period of time just to get that done. But hopefully that's quite quick. I think the providers that do this are, well established, well set up, and do it in lots of organisations. So hopefully that'll be a very short period of time. And yeah, interesting reflection, isn't it? Maybe we should have done more updates on this as we went through, even if no one had asked a question. So genuine apologies, and kind of good news, exciting. I hope it will be of real value to some colleagues that want to have an electric car, and we'll be able to get it slightly cheaper with that tax bit off your gross pay and things. So hopefully that will be really good, and maybe we can even get some feedback from one of the first people who joined the scheme, and let us know how it goes on, and we could feed that back through here if anyone wants to share a story once it's up and running.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Right. Our next question is from an anonymous colleague who works in labs, and their question is: has there been any engagement with the University of Aberdeen about students continuing to use the patient and staff parking areas, especially in the Lady Helen parking centre? The colleague has no issue with students who are on placement within the hospital, but it's very frustrating to see students who are clearly attending the university and City Centre for lectures parking in the staff/patient spaces. There seems to have been a particular issue recently when there was an event on at the university which led the car park to be extraordinarily busy too. If the colleague is incorrect and the university have permission to also use the car park, then they apologise.
No, good question. And car parking continues to be a challenge. I think the Lady Helen car park has made a tremendous difference for sure. So so a couple of things there. Clearly, if someone's on a placement working for us, they're completely eligible to park there on the 6th floor or above. So just to remind everyone, you can only park on the 6th floor and above as a staff member, and that would include people on placement. In terms of the car parking team have been in discussions with the university, and those discussions are ongoing. So hopefully we will reach a mechanism and an approach that we can do to keep that only for people on placement. And as the question is asked, absolutely correct. The students aren't eligible to park there in line with how our staff members are from level 6 and above. And I think the other thing, probably just a great opportunity to say, we've still not received the result of the planning bit, but of course we'll keep people absolutely posted around the progress of that, and maybe the next chapter of that as we receive the outcome of that planning proposal, we'll be able to pick up the student, but again with some more publicity and things like that, and try and maybe tie some of that together as we hopefully reach a permanent state. But of course that's not in our hands. That is a planning decision at the moment. So hopefully that just covers that. Stephen, did I pick all the bits up there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Adam.
Good.
As you say, the sort of broader update for colleagues, because clearly, it's the application to amend the use of the Lady Helen Parking Centre has been ongoing for quite some time. So yeah, as soon as we have news, we will absolutely share it within the organisation. So thank you, Adam. Okay, the next question is from an anonymous colleague who works in Ashgrove House. Their question is there going to be an end to the movement of management within the forestry site, or the what we used to call the acute sector? It is and continues to cause a lack of continuity for the staff working in the teams and for the staff working below. Every time there is a new lead or a new senior manager, the first thing they seem to do is to move the middle management. We've seen what appears to be people fighting to keep the post they are in and having multiple interviews for their current post. What this has led to, in the colleagues' opinion, is a lack of focus on day-to-day work, and it makes a very unpleasant working environment. We need strong, consistent leadership, not constant change.
Yeah, I think this is another real challenge, isn't it? I think there's some very understandable approaches when people are placed in roles to try and maximize from their prism, from their view as they come into a role, to maximize how they organize their teams and do their work. And that does naturally cause some changes normally. Now, I'm sorry if people are feeling that feels like an unpleasant work environment. It's happened lots of times. We do try and keep as consistent a management system and approach as we can. That said, I think we've had lots of feedback about portfolios and how portfolios haven't quite delivered what we hoped. So as I hope people know, I think anyone that follows the GAPF agenda or the Area Clinical Forum or many of these groups where we all come together, we have done some review of portfolios. So there is likely to be a little bit more change over the coming months as the actual delivery plan for that gets put in place. It might not quite be at the end, but I'm really thoughtful of what the individual's saying, and I'm really thoughtful about the scale of challenge we're facing financially, how I suspect change, I don't mean managerial change like this and lots of people's posts, but change as a whole is going to be really, really constant, isn't it? It just feels impossible to imagine that as we transform and change and evolve into an organization that's fit for the next decade or couple of decades, and to fit our financial envelope and all the things that we're all worrying away at. I suspect this change element is going to be constant. So I think the commitment that myself and Stephen can give, again, we co-chaired the last review of organizational change policy, didn't we? Is that as an organization, we absolutely do any change really robustly, really well. We use the policy really appropriately, and we hope the policy's really fit for purpose. We, as a group, spent a bit of time trying to get that right, didn't we, and to cover all the eventualities. So maybe that's the commitment. So there's probably a bit more change to come, and my commitment is that we do it well. And anyone listening this that feels they're in a change process and it's not happening well, please let me know, or let Stephen know, or any of Stephen's colleagues, or any of our HR colleagues and things. Do speak up. It's really important that people speak up when we're not doing things as well as we'd all want to. And I'm always thoughtful of that lovely quote by Petronius, you know, about every time it looked like we were organised and well managed, they well running unit, they'd reorganise us. So I'm really thoughtful of that in my own approach to organisation, and not trying to change structures very often, because I think it's not always helpful, but I absolutely understand why it does happen and why people are trying to, you know, continue to tweak a system to make it as effective as it can be.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Yes, I suppose it's that feeling of being engaged with, or almost that sense of control for any individual, you know,
Yeah.
working within the system. So hopefully, for the colleague who's posed the question, hopefully they get some comfort, even if there's, you know, absolutely no guarantee that, you know, there won't be further changes. But hopefully, you know, and clearly, as you've said, there are avenues, there are, you know, there are places that colleagues can access support, whether that's you or I or colleagues in HR, or, you know, trade unions, professional organisations, all of those, you know, sort of your points, because for anyone feeling the way that individual appears to be feeling, that's, yeah, equally not acceptable. They shouldn't be experiencing an unpleasant working environment. So
absolutely, absolutely not, absolutely no. Well said, Stephen. That's absolutely the key issue, for sure.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Right, I think yeah, one more question from an anonymous colleague in research and development, who asks, can we get an update on the protected time for learning, that element of the agenda for change non-pay agreement, which was part of the pay settlement for 2023 to 24? Updates in the daily brief have been vague, and it is disappointing to see what seems like minimal progress. Can Adam provide a more specific update on how this will work in practice and when it will be implemented?
Yeah, so just a tiny bit of background, just to check everyone's on the same page. So the non-pay settlement in last pay deal for people who are paid on the agenda for change contract had three components. The idea of protected learning time, and I'll answer that specific question now. Then there was also the reduction to the 36-hour week, of which we've clearly taken the first step and reduced the working week by half an hour. And then the third part was the opportunity for nursing staff who are band 5 to potentially be regraded to a band 6 if they were undertaking predominantly their role as a band 6 nurse. So those were the three bits. So the protected learning time, Tom Power, our Director of People and Culture, chairs our board that oversees this work and has those three component parts in it. In terms of the part about protected learning time, we did some work through a survey initially, got 1,500 responses about statutory and mandatory training, and therefore really clear baseline to work from. Nationally, there's work around trying to get this idea of a training passport. So wherever you work, you'd take your training with you, because at the moment you quite often have to repeat training, which is just kind of really clumsy, isn't it? So that's making progress. Absolutely trying to get this, again, this is nationally, some standardization of training across different systems, and absolutely trying to understand how successful putting in this protected learning time for training is going to be. So locally, we're building on this by sharing best practice between teams, and the training needs for different professions. So making sure those reviews are shared and understood. We'll continue into 2025 to look at the 9 core mandatory training modules, and then we'll be able to do that on that once for Scotland basis against that national update I just gave you. You know, this is a really important bit, and again, really key thing that we're working on through partnership. So through the Grampian Area Partnership Forum, we get an update most meetings, that we almost every month, about this. So I think we're making progress. I think we're kind of getting the rock pushed towards the edge of the precipice where we'll be able to push it off, and then actually that protected time will be much clearer and be able to deliver what we're intending to do. So apologies, it's probably felt a bit slow in this preparatory phase, but we're getting closer to absolutely having it in place. And maybe, Stephen, it's just a good opportunity to be able to say something about the band 5 to 6 review, just to remind people who are band 5 nurses, if they're thinking about that, the portal's open, people can start that process and can get information locally from hopefully from their line manager, just to help them understand the process and what they need to step through, or of course from their trade union representative, or of course from a partnership rep. So there's plenty of people with knowledge that can help people in that process to understand what's required.
Yeah,
and Stephen, and you probably know more of this than me, but while we're on it, and the reduction to the 36-hour week, dropping that last hour from 37 to 36, what's the most up-to-date position you're aware of for that?
I believe we're still waiting for our colleagues on the Scottish Terms and Conditions Committee, which is
Right.
got the action sack. We're waiting for them to clarify what is due to happen effective from the 1st of April 2025.
Right.
So will it be a move in one step from 37 to 36 hours for whole time for full-time staff, or will it be another half hour, or
right.
So those discussions are still ongoing. Although that said, I'm very well aware, certainly within the non-pay elements programme board that Tom Power, my co-chair, and in lots of other places, including GEPF, it is recognised where you and I are having this conversation in the middle of December. April will arrive very, very soon. So hopefully our national colleagues will get to an agreed position and communicate that to the boards as soon as possible. So okay. So,
Thanks, Stephen. That was helpful just to close all three of the bits in the loop. So thanks.
Thanks, Adam. That's us reached the sort of end of the submitted questions. I guess as we've had this conversation today, quite a lot of questions have been around sort of change and the sort of how that the pressures the changes and other pressures are applying to our colleagues and how that's making them feel. So what message would you have for colleagues in the system, I guess, in the middle of all of this?
Oh yeah, thanks, Stephen. That is such a key issue. So I think firstly I'd absolutely acknowledge how challenging it is actually for everyone that's working the system, whatever bit you work in the system, regardless of your role or your job. I think everyone's up against it, and that's driven a bit by our financial challenge, a bit by our demand challenge, our capacity challenge. So all of the things we know and we rehearse quite frequently. So I think I'd absolutely acknowledge it. That'd be the first thing. I think the second thing would be to just think, how do we set out our future? And we've got the plan for the future, this thing here that we've had in place for a couple of years now. And I believe that the plan for the future sets a vision for a health and care system that's going to be quite different to the one we experience and find today. And it's, take, I suspect, another decade, something like that, to get there. So if people can see the plan and the future state, I hope that gives that beacon of a future, and actually allows people to have hope that what feels incredibly challenging at the moment, there is a different place that we're trying to get to. And then, how do we take those steps each year to get closer and closer to that different future that we believe will create our sustainability, for our obviously for our colleagues, but also for the patients and the population that we look after. So that's my second thing. And then I think my third thing is a genuine reflection that we've got phenomenal people work for NHS Grampian, and all the colleagues that we have, all 17,000 people, and I said this at the board the other day, and I absolutely mean it, is I quite often find myself quite worried about things and the position we're in, the challenge, the demand, the pressure we're under, and then I always find myself deliberately remembering that every day thousands of people get treated really well, really successfully, have a really good experience in healthcare environment, and that happens because of our healthcare and our clinical teams. It happens because of all our teams that support that activity to happen. And that's 17,000 really phenomenal colleagues we've got, and working together, trying to get to that future state, the plan for the future. That gives me hope every day. And I really think if people can try and get that, even when it's been really difficult in the moment, there's going to be something that's different if we keep working on it together, and and have that sense of we can move forward together, however difficult that is. So I'm not belittling it at all. It's a genuine thing, but I that's my idea, is how do we absolutely have collective hope for a different future.
Okay, thank you, Adam. And thanks to everyone who sent in their questions and for all the feedback we get from you after each and every one of these videos. As always, your suggestions are really welcome, and I'd like to wish everyone all the best over the festive season, particularly for those of you who are working throughout.